How's it going, Jets fans? It's Ryan Moran here from Fireside Jets. Pleasure to be welcomed by loyal New York Jets fans, Ali Ashraf, who I'm sure some of you probably know. I've been following his work for many years, and we're pumped to welcome him to the Fireside Jets community. He'll be doing some work with me here alongside with Alex when he's occupied with other stuff. So pumped to welcome Ali in. If any of you aren't following his work to begin with, definitely do so. I've been following him for a long time, and pumped to welcome him to the FSJ community here with us. Obviously, we're coming to you after a pretty disastrous night for the New York Jets. You felt like this team at 7-4 a couple of weeks ago, coming into the month of December, had some really strong, hopes for the playoffs for the first time since 2010. And, the Jets have now dropped 4 straight games in pretty tough fashion last night on prime time. Before, we get into things here, just to quickly go over the team stats. The time possession, the Jaguars held the ball for 34 minutes and 52 seconds to the Jets, 25 minutes and 8 seconds. The time of possession all year for this football team has been an issue, and it continued once again last night. You take it to the penalties. The Jets had 9 for 64 yards compared to the Jags 3 for 25. Another pretty big, discrepancy there. The turnover battle, the Jets lost yet again 2-1. That's, all 4 games now on this losing streak. The Jets have lost the turnover battle. Third down efficiency was dreadful. The Jags went 7 to 16, 44% to the Jets, 2 for 13, 15%. Not going to cut it. And then obviously in the red zone, the Jags were 1 for 3 to the Jets, 0 for 2. So really, when you lose in all 5 of those key categories as a team, I mean, it's going to be pretty tough to win. And I think that's reflective in last night's final score of 19-3. The Jets now dropped to 7-8, 4-game losing streak, and the playoffs are looking, as bleak as could be at this point in the 2022 season. Obviously, you start with the offense, a forgettable night for Zach Wilson. I think there is tough competition based on what he's done in his last 2 years, but I think last night might have actually been his worst start when you look at it. Just everything that was at stake for this team. And it was the same issues that continued, the fundamentals, the decision-making, the inaccuracies. And, obviously you have people now wondering, is his time here, really run its course? And that's going to be interesting, obviously, as the offseason now intensifies. And Chris Trevor came in and gave this team, some life. Obviously, he has limitations as a passer, but I think the juice that you expected him to bring into the lineup, he certainly did that with his legs. But overall, I mean, the Jets, aside from Strebler's 54 yards on the ground between Michael Carter, Ty Johnson, Bam Knight, they had 12 total yards rushing. So obviously never going to cut it. The offensive line continued to struggle. Ali, what are some of your thoughts on just the, woeful struggles offensively, led by Michael LaFleur and Zach Wilson here?
I mean, yeah, it was definitely a terrible loss, but I think the one thing came out of it is that Zach Wilson is done being a New York Jet. That's kind of for sure that his time here is done, because you've seen Mike White strive in the offense, Joe Flacco and Streveler both do well with this offense, and Zach Wilson still struggles, and they still dealt with the same offensive line. They dealt with the same play calling, the same calls, and he was looking for his checkdowns, and Zach Wilson can't even hit his checkdowns anymore. So it's a lot of mental in his head, and that's not good for a quarterback. He has talent. He still has the arm strength. He still has it, but he just doesn't know how to play quarterback. He has the talents, all the mechanics, everything like that, but he just can't play football. He probably will get a shot because he's still a second overall pick. But you got benched for a Streveler when you're a second overall pick. So that tells you a lot about what's going through your head and why you're not functioning like all these other quarterbacks. Like Mike White was able to go down the field. Streveler on his first drive out there got a huge ovation and went down the field doing his style of play. So they were moving the ball. They didn't score, obviously, but it was kind of the Jets' kind of way to lose that game just because there's nothing working for them. The time of possession, going back to it, the 3 points that we scored was because of the defense of Quinn and Williams, right? We got to the 16-yard line in the beginning of the game, and we're like, okay, we're in a good stride. We couldn't even get a first down. Like, think about that. Like, we don't even think about 6 points. We couldn't even get a first down from the 16-yard line. So, just the offense was not there for us. And surprisingly, we were only gave up 19 points to them. And I don't know how. It should have been like 45-0 the way we were playing out there yesterday. So this is not acceptable, especially for a team that was ready to go to the playoffs and ready to make a stand. And this team was 5-2 at one point. And they pretty much are 7-8 now. So just think about how this team just collapsed. And that's not a lot. A lot goes on coaching as well, but a lot of the players, the quarterback position has held the team back. And the Jets, I truly believe, are a quarterback away. for being competitive, and we just saw Zach Wilson's not it. So I think that's the main storyline. I think the Jets defense did pretty decent, even though they were bad to a lot of people. They did pretty well. They kept them to 19 points. Trevor Lawrence has been pretty hot so far, late as of late. So to keep them to 19 points is pretty solid. But the Jets offense just couldn't help and do their job to keep this game at least relatively close. And they had chances to score. They had chances to put up points. And even if they put the points up for a touchdown in the beginning of the game, we would probably go down to the wire with them into the fourth quarter just because that one touchdown, but they couldn't get that done. So you can say weather was an issue. You could say the boos were an issue. You can say whatever it is, but the Jets weren't ready to play that football game. The quarterback play was just not great, and we all know now Zach Wilson is done, and he probably won't never get a start with the Jets again. But again, it is what it is, and it's kind of what the Jets kind of do and what we are kind of used to seeing from the Jets. But it's on to the next year. I think the coaching staff is still decent, but now we're already looking at offseason stuff on Twitter. Everyone's already looking at it. So we're back to square one.
I was going to say the arrival time for the offseason talk is later than usual this year. So I guess that's a good thing and progress has been made. But Zach now benched twice in 9 games. I mean, just how he comes back from that, I don't really know at this point in time. I think the fan base, like you said, obviously, made kind of their, voice heard last night with the boos. And, I think the patience going into that game, just based on the fact that this team is on a 3-game losing streak, knowing Zach has a lot to do with it. And there is blame to go around. I think you said at the, beginning of the game for this offense, I mean, just the play calling from the floor. Don't think, Zach was ever put in great positions. And I don't think that the rhythm, maybe when Zach had a couple of throws there, they put Chris Trevler in and they get that false start. Like they're consistently working from behind the chains. The running game has just been non-existent. And part of that has to do with Zach because teams are just loading up the box. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's definitely, not good by any means right now. And I loved your point there on just this team, for me, at least personally, I didn't really get the sense, you usually get it from Quinnen Williams, from Garrett Wilson, from Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, but the team as a whole, I loved your point on it. Just you never got the vibe from this group that it felt like a playoff game, right? Like you said. And that's reflective in a 19-3 game where you are just flat and you really hit the nail on the head. The 3 points came from Quinnen Williams. It wasn't even the Jets offense. It wasn't a drive that they, put together good work, that they stayed ahead of the chains, converted third downs, established any sort of bounce. Like we said, Streveler's responsible for 80% of the rushing yards they had, and he played a little over a quarter. The offensive line didn't get it done. And then you just take it to the defensive side of the ball. I think the Jets defense has been great in 2022. There's no doubt about it. But I do think you look at the first half of the Vikings game, you look at spurts in the Lions game, in the first quarter and the fourth quarter, how they started and finished that game. And this game last night in the first half, I didn't see it. I got to be honest. I think Q did what we would expect from him, but just the opportunistic, play from this defense. You're talking about the last 6 games. They have 2 turnovers now. I mean, that's a recipe for losing football. I don't care who the quarterback is. They've lost the turnover battle over this 4-game losing streak. And aside from being opportunistic, there are just no splash plays. You look at, Quinnen had the fumble last night and that came on a sack. You look at the rest of the game, the Jets over the final 57, 58 minutes, wherever it was, did not have 1 sack the rest of the game. That has been lacking the last couple of weeks. I think this pass rush is kind of underwhelmed, and the Jags were banged up last night in the trenches on both sides. Obviously, we know Foley Fatukasi from his time with the Jets. Trayvon Walker was out. Cam Robinson was out, and the Jets just did not capitalize. They did not exploit in any way. The 96-yard drive was as pitiful as it gets, I think, all year from the Jets defense. There were hardly even third downs. I mean, you couldn't even get Bryce Huff on the field to rush because the Jags were just staying ahead of schedule and beating this offense, whether the Jets were in man or zone. The rush was getting home. They couldn't play the run. And the Jets defense, to me, in the second half, sure, they did enough, but I think they buried him in too much of a hole in the first half, knowing what they were putting up with offensively, and that just wasn't going to be enough.
Yeah, one issue is you're not going to win ball games if you're trailing and always fighting to get up in the scoring board. They're always down by some type of lead, and then they put themselves in a black hole where they can't. It's going to take forever to get back. Obviously, they've done it before. They did it against the Cleveland Browns. They've done it against a lot of other teams of coming back and being involved in the game, but it's not going to work every time. And you're on primetime football. Your first prime time of the game, the Jets kind of look decent. Now everyone thinks they're crap again because what the showing they showed, and that's probably one of the worst games of the season and on prime time. And going into the game, I even had that feeling. I feel like there was something wrong with this game, especially with Zach Wilson starting. I was not. No one's trusting Zach anymore. No one trusts. Even going into the game, people are like, "Okay, we'll see what happens." But as soon as he came out, the boo started already in the beginning of the game. So no one expected this, and for a team that had so much hope, it just went away. And if we had those star players, we had Brees Hall, still AVT, and all these guys, it would be a different story because you would just run the damn ball with Brees Hall and win football games. But you don't have that factor anymore. And without people were posting on Twitter a lot of the record we had with him and then without him, and it's very disturbing because we could not win football games. There's some guys that had to step up. Garrett Wilson was not getting involved. You saw the frustration of players. You saw Garrett Wilson being upset. He did the fumble. There was a lot of frustration on the sidelines, and it's obvious because they're a better football team than what we just saw on the field, and us Jets fans know it because we saw every single down. But if you can't execute and you're always falling behind, and then you're also like not taking the quarterback out, that's what I don't like about Robert Saleh. You saw him struggling. If you put Streveler in a little bit earlier, there could have been a better shot of winning that football game because he was moving the ball down, and you give him a couple more drives. And I feel that that's going to be a topic that everyone talks about for the next couple of weeks. Is that if Streveler went in, can the Jets could have beaten the Jaguars because Zach Wilson was not doing anything for you. And the fact that Robert Saleh said that at halftime, he didn't even think about benching him at that point is kind of ridiculous. And he even said that I didn't bench Zach Wilson, but technically it was pretty much a bench. So just to have that two benches in a row for Zach Wilson in one season, and he has not shown anything to be proud of. And even his throws, his touchdown, even last week was not even that impressive. His showing he did have 300 yards, but like it was a very ugly 300 yards for Zach Wilson. So look, he's done here. It's just about finding the next quarterback for us. I think we're a quarterback away. You get a full healthy team next year, and we'll see what they can do. But right now, what from this past game shows a lot about the character of the team that they are ready to fight. The defense is ready to fight. They're fighting until the very end, and they have some young dogs on this team. But it's about executing, winning the time of possession, which they never do anymore. Turnovers, where are the turnovers? Can this defense cause some turnovers, give some hype to this team? Third down offense just is absolutely atrocious. They can't move the chains, they can't move the ball. They're always getting penalties. Even when they start the 40-yard line or whatever it is, they get a holding penalty, go back, keep just going back instead of going forward. And the red zone offense has just been pretty crap since the Vikings game. They couldn't score against the Vikings. That's a game that they should have won. And if we have decent quarterback play, I keep saying this to everyone, if we had a little bit of decent quarterback play, we probably had 4 more wins right now. It could be the Patriots games, the Vikings game. It could have been this
All
game,
Patriots
the
games.
Lions game. It could have been so many games. We could have been already in the playoffs and maybe even clinching soon. Like, it's just about quarterback play, and we just didn't know how to move it normally. So, again, there's a lot of work to do for the Jets team. There's still a lot of holes. The offensive line is still still banged up. But you guys are we're gonna get healthy pieces back again next year. So it's all the quarterback play. Our quarterback is the reason we lost this game. Because Jaguars defense is not great. It's very bad actually. It's worse than the league, and we couldn't even move the damn ball. So, that's something that LaFleur and Salah have to look at themselves and be like, okay, we need to get rid of this guy and get someone else that can actually move the ball and win us some football games.
Absolutely. A couple of closing thoughts I have here. I think your point with Salah and the way he's handled Zach, I think unfortunately for him, he really has his hands tied because you look at the fact that the Jets just blundered everything with Sam Darnold. Like, there is ownership involved here. And I feel like the fact that he's got to report to JD, he's got to report to the Johnsons. I feel like that's kind of where Salah, kind of gets his hands tied, like I said, a little bit. And it really forces him to kind of keep Zach in because, like I said, you bench him for a second time. I mean, it's just the writing is on the wall really at that point. And from there, I think, you said it, the Jaguars defense. I mean, this is now 2 games in a row where Zach Wilson has gone up against a team that was in the bottom 6 of the NFL overall defensively. You have probably 20 points to show for it. I mean, last night. I mean, Trevor outgained Zach from a total yard standpoint offensively in that one drive alone. I mean, that's just how bad it was. You said it best. I think losing Breece Hall and Elijah Vera Tucker, it crushed this team. I mean, you don't like to use injuries as an excuse because every team copes with them, but those guys were the identity of this offense. It gave this football team something week to week they could rely on. Obviously, the Jets were 5-2 with them, and now they're 2-6 without them. So that really speaks for itself. And you said getting Breece and AVT back next year will be huge for this team. But it is tough because you felt like this team in a primetime game, being 7-7 and really starting to change the narrative a little bit this year. You just felt like they were the same old Jets last night, sadly. And the vibe you got for most of the night was just so bad. But this team is talented. I think the last two draft classes, knowing that there's going to be flexibility this offseason with certain cap casualties, which are obviously, like you said, already being thrown around out there, what moves the Jets are going to make. And ultimately, this team's got a big offseason ahead because next year with Saleh and JD, I think they got to make the playoffs. So whatever thoughts you guys have below, welcome Ali again to FSJ. We're pumped to have him. We'll be coming to you guys with more content here soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Jets episode soon. Have a good one.